Schwartzberg.
I'm Mariah Mitchell.
I'm Maddie Norton.
I'm Maddie Matera.
I'm Colleen Sweezy.
And today we'll be discussing the short story Bloodchild by Octavia Butler. Okay, so let's begin by discussing our initial reactions to the text as a whole. So my initial reaction to the text was that it was really confusing and weird. I don't typically read science fiction, so for me the story was really obscure, and at times I didn't really understand what was actually going on in the text. The story was really intriguing in a strange way, and even though it's obscure, it had an interesting way that it addressed like gender roles and roles in a dystopic society. So I thought it was interesting, but also just really weird.
This short story made me feel wildly uncomfortable. Science fiction has never really been my thing. It's kind of scary. The thought of that something like this could ever happen, whether it be on Earth or not, is unsettling. It's pretty messed up that these people are just being used as hosts for these aliens' offspring, and at the end, Octavia Butler says that it's a love story. But when I was reading it, I was getting more of an abuse vibe.
Initially, I thought it was, it seemed really weird when it was described what it was about, but I gave it like a chance. I went into it with an open mind, but it's pretty weird. Once it started to get to like the gross parts, it kind of freaked me out and I wasn't into it.
I just thought it was like crazy, like the whole thing is like a whole. The idea of like the males having to like go through like a birth process and getting like
Near-death experience.
Yeah, like literally. I just thought it was so crazy. Like all of it was.
There are no
like,
epidurals.
So
Oh yeah.
nope, the stingers. The stingers are basically epidurals.
I see that.
That like knocks them out.
Overall, the word choices too, so graphic.
Also, like,
Yeah.
They made
when
it
they
very
were
uncomfortable.
eating the eggs, they were
It's
drunk.
weird.
Like,
Yeah.
It was so crazy.
I honestly don't know how she made it up.
How she like came up with the whole story. Like, how do you even like think of something like that? Like, where does that come from?
Those
She talks
names.
about how
How did she come up with those names?
she talked about at the end how she got inspiration from like these flies,
The botflies
that do the
that
same
go-
exact
they
thing.
go under your
like,
skin
in,
and like
like
they
actuality.
leave their eggs and then they like grow.
Yeah,
It's like parasites.
Yeah.
So she like said things like when she has to deal with things that she doesn't like, she writes about
Yeah.
it, and then this is what came out of those flies. Her not liking those flies.
I felt it was really weird when she said that it amazed her that people saw it as like slavery, because I think it's so weird and I think it's slavery. And she said that it was a love story, and honestly, I do not see how that's true.
Yeah, it definitely
Yeah, I
gives out
think
more
if you read like
abuse
deeper
vibes.
into it, you can see it being like that, but on the surface, it's very weird. And
At the end, he was saying how, like, he wanted her for himself. And, like, he didn't know why he did, but, like, he just did. But at the same time, he didn't want... Yeah.
It's like being in a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
Exactly. Funny you should mention it.
So, like, I know the story is, like, a short story and it's a form of science fiction. So, like, I personally don't have, like, any experience with science fiction. I don't really
None
enjoy the genre when I read it. So, does anyone else have, like, any?
I've never read anything science fiction.
I've never
No,
read
never.
or watched it.
Yeah.
I've seen like the Star Wars.
Yeah, I've seen Star Wars.
movies,
Not like Star Trek,
but like, yeah.
I've watched
Anything
Star Wars.
I'm
further
afraid
than
of Star Wars.
I haven't seen
haven't.
Star Wars. So, for me, like, listening to this and, like, reading it was just, like, I think that's part of the reason why I thought it was so weird. Just because I'm not used to
Yeah,
it.
it's nothing
It's like when I was
I've
reading
ever
it, I was like, what
experienced
is going
before.
on? And, like, why am I being forced to read this? Like, it's so weird.
Yeah,
It's
I kind of stay
terrifying.
away from it. I try to stay away from it.
It is kind of like, at the same time, I think it's kind of cool though, because it's so
Yeah.
different from like everything else. Like, it's weird, but I can only do it in small doses.
Yeah.
Did anyone have like any particular passages that really like affected them or that really like made them feel uncomfortable?
The one at the end when he like finally agreed to like be the host because he didn't want his sister to have to go through it, and he was like saying how he like laid down, he undressed, laid down beside her, and he knew what to do and what to expect, and like he just like didn't want to do it, but he did it anyway to save his sister.
Yeah, I thought that was really nice that, like, he was so prepared to just be like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. He was going to kill himself, but then he, like, did the right thing, and he was, like, he was so nice, and he saved his sister from having to go
But
through
if
it.
the alien actually loved him, she wouldn't have done it to him because he didn't want it.
That's true. Toxic
It's like
relationship.
rape.
It does sound like
It
rape.
sounded so rapey.
There was one passage that like particularly kind of discussed like more in depth, like it was just really graphic, and I think it affected me. So like the passage, it's on the 9th page of the story, and it said like his body convulsed with the first cut. He almost tore himself away from me. The sound he made, I'd never heard such sounds come from anything human. Tagato Toy seemed to pay no attention as she lengthened and deepened the cut now, and then pausing to lick away blood. His blood vessels contracted, reacting to the chemistry of her saliva, and the bleeding slowed. So that kind of affected me in a weird way. Like, it was just really graphic, and I wasn't expecting to, like, hear about, like, cutting
A
into
dark
him,
turn.
like, licking
Yeah,
his blood. It
yeah.
was just, like, strange.
Kind of like after that, I guess she's still like getting the grubs out and stuff. Says Tagato bit away the egg case, licked away the blood. Did she like the taste? Did childhood habits die hard or not die at all? I think that can tie into our discussion on childhood and what it means and stuff like that. I thought it was interesting.
The passage that I thought was kind of wild was when Gon's brother Kui is talking about how he saw the alien people, the grubs eating a guy when he was younger, and it's like he begged for her to kill him. Finally, she did. She cut his throat, one swipe of one claw. I saw the grubs eat their way out, then burrow in again, still eating. That like I could just like picture it, and it was so crazy. It is a parasite.
You know when like
weird.
people have those worms growing inside?
Yeah.
Like, have you ever seen House? Like, they could never, like, it's like in their veins. Oh.
That's so gross. It's so crazy.
Yeah, a passage that I thought, well, that kind of stood out to me. It's on page 17. It says, it was clearly hard for her to let go of the rifle. A shudder went through her. She made a hissing sound of distress. It occurred to me that she was afraid. She was old enough to have seen what guns could do to people. Now her young and this gun would be together in the same house. Well, I thought it was like, I don't know, it made me like sad. Like her description of like her, like, I don't know, it made you really feel for the character. Like a shudder went through her.
Yeah.
And
I felt bad for his mom in the beginning when
Yeah.
she was like, she like clearly didn't like knew that night was gonna be the night that Gon was gonna get the eggs like put in him, and she was like, she didn't want it to happen. I just felt
But
bad
also
for
she
her.
was like sacrificing him for her own selfish
Yeah.
interests. So like,
I feel like maybe there might have been a point for her that she just realized like how wrong it was. Maybe like at first
It was, like,
she,
too late.
Yeah, but it was too late because she already promised him to toy or whatever. Because then she like stopped eating the eggs and stuff, so like she probably realized like how much power it had over her.
Do you
and, like,
think
the
that's why the alien like drugged the mom so that she couldn't be
Maybe.
like?
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
The whole story kind of just seemed to like dehumanize them down to like that they only have this purpose for like technology and for science to like, and so I don't know. It was interesting to see that. I guess that's why science fiction is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be really human. So I don't know. I just found that interesting.
Yeah.
They were like they weren't really humans. They were just there for like one purpose.
this story, like you could really tell yesterday when we were, or 2 days ago when we were talking about like childhood in class, it made me really think that like they are forced to be like out of childhood like much sooner than we are, and yeah.
They say it's a coming of age story because at the end he finally like realizes that like he has to do it and he accepts responsibility and sacrifices like himself for his sister. So like he's kind of like growing up.
Like that could have been his moment of transition from childhood.
It's like very drastically different from like our transition from childhood to adulthood. Like for us, it's like, oh, you pay your bills, like you live on your own, you get your own job, like.
It's like a process,
Yeah.
but his was just like one
Very
defining
abrupt,
moment.
like-
Yeah.
In the short story Bloodchild, the children in the story are portrayed as worm-like creatures that will eventually grow into adults resembling insect-like species. The main event of the story is a horrifying birth of the alien worms. The worms are torn from the body of the male host in a graphic, bloody way. The author, Octavia Butler, portrays an alien planet where Terrans have escaped from the disasters of Earth. The alien people cannot have their own children, so they must use the male, like humans, as hosts in order to bear their own. The aliens, but in the story they're called Tlicks, use a form of drug in order to seduce the Terrans and to foster bonds with their hosts. This demonstrates a strange, love-hate relationship and, kind of the way we thought it. It was, in real life, an abusive, relationship, conflict of the story. Gon is a young man whose mother has agreed to sacrifice her as a host for the alien embryos in exchange for the right to bear her own human children. Gon is torn between his fear and horror witnessing an alien birth and his desire to make sure his family is okay. He ultimately agrees to be impregnated. This impregnation is absurdly resemblant of human sexuality, but it's just the male and the female roles are reversed. In this story, Butler explores two big themes. The first is the reversal of gender roles, and then the second is the power struggle between two species who must codepend on each other if they want to survive. Bloodchild was written as a love story, as she said in her conclusion of everything, but I know that I definitely don't see it like that, and I know the members of my group don't either.